Hello. It is a joy to be together on this day of renewal. Last year, I invited you to consider deepening your relationship with God and Jesus. Today, I want to first offer a gentle, hopeful reflection that honors tradition while opening space for transformation and our shared religious life. I share the Paschal Mystery today because it has shaped my own faith journey. And I believe its pattern of dying and rising speaks to a universal human truth, that renewal is always possible and that life can emerge in every tradition, every community, and every person. I believe in the Paschal Mystery. As I talk about the mystery, my words are not meant to persuade, but to gently share what anchors my faith. This is the heart of what I believe, and I share it with reverence, not insistence. I understand that Unitarian Universalists take the Bible seriously, but not literally. I respect that thoughtful approach, and I myself hold space for many paths to spiritual understanding. I hold the Paschal Mystery close to my heart, not as a demand, but as an anchor. I believe in the dying and rising of Jesus, his love poured out for us, and in the many names that reveal that love: Savior, Redeemer, Light of the World, Bread of Life, Prince of Peace. Each title highlights a facet of grace that invites one into deeper connection with God and those around us. So that brings us to Easter. So to start with, what does Easter traditionally represent? I learned in adult faith formation while I was attending a Catholic church and considering conversion to Catholicism that Easter is an important part of the aforementioned mystery. Before I go on, I would like to repeat that I'm sharing my personal spiritual standpoint and not acting as a commercial for Catholicism or Christianity. This is just a portion of my religious views, and to me, an important one. The Paschal Mystery refers to the entire saving work of Jesus Christ, his passion, death, resurrection, and ascension, with Easter as the yearly liturgical celebration and high point of this mystery, specifically honoring his victory over sin and death, which brings new life to humanity and draws us closer to God. The Paschal Mystery is the content, the events of dying and rising, while Easter is the celebration of that mystery. What does this have to do with humanity? Well, what I was taught is that it's God's way of apologizing for what he did to humanity because of the consequences he levied for Adam and Eve's choices. Adam and Eve's disobedience caused a major shift in humanity's relationship with God and introduced sin, suffering, and death. Many see Jesus' death on the cross as the ultimate tangible apology for these fundamental changes, a demonstration of God's love that replaces the need for humans to earn divine favor through their own efforts. It's the ultimate apology of God, a supreme act of reconciliation from God and humanity. Since humans cannot make enough reparations for sin, Christ, who's both divine and human, offered himself as the infinite sacrifice to bridge the gap between God and humanity. Easter, then, is not only a story we inherit, but a story that continues to shape us. Whether we hold the Paschal Mystery as a literal truth, a metaphor for transformation, or a lens through which to understand our own becoming, its power remains the same. Life can rise again. What is broken can be mended. What is lost can be found. What has been dismissed, forgotten, or buried within us or around us can be called back into life. The Paschal Mystery invites Christians into the heart of God's redemptive love, but its echoes reach far beyond any single tradition. In everyday resurrections and the courage to change our lives and the restoration of those once rejected, we witness the same pattern of dying and rising that has shaped human hope, for centuries. So, today, as we honor Easter in all its depths and complexities, may we open ourselves up to resurrections waiting in our own lives. May we look with compassion at the world around us, noticing where new life is struggling to break through. And may we become people who help roll stones away so that justice, beauty, courage, and love can rise again in us and through us for the healing of our shared world. In his book, Christ for Unitarian Universalists, a new dialogue with traditional Christianity, Scotty McLennan suggests there are lessons in Christ's resurrection that we can connect to our own lives and in our personal resurrections through changes and shifts. He clearly outlines several types of resurrection, including everyday resurrection, life resurrection, and afterlife resurrection. First, there is everyday as resurrection, where opportunities to live a spiritually fulfilled life are always right in front of us, if only we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Where the resurrection comes with the recognition that any of our lives can always be transformed and begin again. That resurrection comes from the Christ within us, breaking forth as if from the tomb, inviting us to be reborn by enacting the Christ self we had forgotten or never known. We are experiencing the risen Christ in our own lives. Where, experiencing the risen Christ in our own lives, people have stopped drinking, changed jobs at great risk, and held ground before dictators. As Unitarian Universalists, we do resonate with the ultimate triumph of life over death that Easter also encapsulates, and we celebrate many kinds of resurrections, including the rebirth of nature, the resurrection of hopes and dreams, and the renewal of dead relationships. In this way, we can see Easter as a great day of hope where we affirm the awe-inspiring cycle of life that brings renewal again and again. Universalist minister W. Harris Edwards explains, just as there is cruelty, brutality, self-centeredness, and abandonment in life, so there are values and principles that cannot be killed. They will rise again and again, often in unexpected ways. Justice may be corrupted, delayed, and denied, but it will ultimately emerge, reborn in the hearts of people. Beauty may be paved over by concrete, but again and again it finds startling new ways to shine through and drive out the tawdry and ugly. Courage may be imprisoned in dark cells or the darkest of tombs, but it keeps unpredictably springing up anew in the hearts of the oppressed. Harris goes on to say, love may be long buried beneath hatred, but sooner or later the stone will suddenly be rolled away, allowing love to rise again, to walk with us, and to move profoundly. Positive values like justice, beauty, and courage live and inspire others to redeem human life as they are continually seated in us and rise again in our own lives. Most importantly, the power of love to redeem suffering and misery, to overcome loneliness and fear, does not die. Indeed, it reaches into the grave and far beyond. Everyday resurrection, then, is not only a story we inherit, but a way of life we choose, and invites us to root ourselves in what truly matters, to give our lives to values that outlast us, and to loosen the grip of our own preoccupations so we can turn towards one another with compassion and courage. When we hold a steady hope for the future, even when circumstances challenge it, we participate in the same pattern of renewal that has carried people through great struggles and quiet everyday moments of change. In this spirit, Easter becomes more than a doctrine. It becomes a practice of opening our hearts, lifting one another up, and trusting that new life can rise in us and through us again and again. May this Easter season invite each of us to notice the quiet resurrections unfolding in our own lives, to honor the stories that have shaped us, and to step forward with renewed courage into the new life that is always waiting to rise. Then there's life resurrection, in which resurrection is an everyday occurrence that can take the form of a major life change. Another Unitarian Universalist minister, Dave Rankin, shares a story about a prisoner he regularly visits. Rankin shared, the prisoner lived in a dingy red brick building in the heart of the city, enclosed by walls with bars on the upper windows. It was more like a cave than a home. Only a teenager, he had been convicted of selling and possessing narcotics. He was also a thief and a liar. For almost a year, we met every Thursday in that small room on the second tier of the cell block. We talked about prison, parents, children. We talked about Darwin, Newton, Einstein. We discussed life, love, hope, and truth. We were never aware of the holy in our midst. During his final month in prison, Gene, the prisoner, enrolled as a special student at MIT. After his early release, he became a full-time student in chemistry. When he graduated with honors from MIT, the minister was thanked by Gene's father, his mother, and by Gene himself. The minister was pleased to receive the accolades, but how the stone had been removed from the cave's entrance is impossible to tell. A resurrection is always a mystery, though it happens every day. A life shaped by resurrection invites us to keep returning to what matters most, to the values worth giving ourselves to the freedom that comes when we turn our attention outward, to a resilient hope that refuses to give up on the future. When we live with this kind of clarity and generosity, resurrection stops being an abstract idea and becomes a daily practice, showing up in small shifts of the heart as well as major changes that redefine our lives. It is in choosing meaning over distraction, service over self-absorption, and hope over despair that we discover the quiet, steady power of a new life rising within us. Finally, there is the concept of resurrection in the afterlife, in which some people are restored in the eyes of the world after their physical death. For example, we will first focus on Joan of Arc. A French teenager hears divine voices calling her to help her king defeat the British in battle. She performs well initially, but is soon wounded, and support for her shifts, leading her to be labeled a heretic and ultimately burned at the stake. Over time, the negative opinions about her changed significantly, and the Pope called for an appellate court 24 years after her death, where her sentence was reversed and annulled. In the 20th century, she was canonized as a saint in the Roman Catholic Church and entered our collective imagination as a living myth. She has been embraced by French nationalists, Mexican revolutionaries, feminists, and children everywhere. And her haircut inspired the bob that adorned flappers in the Roaring '20s as a symbol of independence from the patriarchy. We can see and chart Joan of Arc's move from rejection to resurrection. Another example is seen in the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. He faced rejection during his lifetime, yet after his death, he received positive recognition, culminating in a national holiday. McLennan shares, not only was King attacked physically and verbally throughout his life by white people opposing his call for racial unity, but he was also rejected in the last 5 years of his life by many black people who called him an Uncle Tom and an apologist for white people's domination. But he found salvation from within our larger American society, which led to his current popularity. He too is a message of Easter. New life is possible, even in an era of ongoing racist violence that demands Black Lives Matter activism. Life can begin again, and those who are utterly rejected can become the foundation for building a better future. Easter then invites us into a story far larger than any single doctrine or tradition. For Christians, it's the Paschal Mystery, the dying and rising of Jesus, the love that bridges the distance between God and humanity, the grace that renews our lives. But its meaning does not end with belief. As McLennan, Harris, Rankin, and so many others remind us, resurrection is also a pattern woven through human experience. We see it in the quiet, everyday moments when we begin again. We see it in the sweeping transformations of a life that lift a life out of despair and into possibility. We see it in the restoration of those once rejected, Joan of Arc, Martin Luther King, whose legacies rise to guide us long after their deaths. And we see it wherever justice pushes through corruption, wherever beauty breaks through concrete, wherever courage rises in the hearts of the oppressed. As McLennan's text says, values and principles cannot be killed. They will rise again. Easter calls us to notice these resurrections and participate in them, to look with compassion at the world around us, to reconnect with those that have been cast aside, to roll away stones within ourselves, within our community, within our society, so that new life can emerge. However we understand Easter, whether literally, symbolically, spiritually, or metaphorically, its message remains the same. New life is always possible, renewal is always nearby, and we are called again and again to be part of that rising.